Good evening. My name is Jackie Naughton, and I'm here to talk about social media savvy. I am a high school counselor at Lake Braddock, and I am currently also the acting assistant principal of Subschool 3. So we wanted to share some information with you as we've been working on a campaign for kindness with TikTok around our school. So we've wanted to also share some thoughts and current trends in social media and ways that you can support your student in social media and making sure that they're being social media healthy. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So the agenda for tonight is pretty basic. It is the trends and statistics. What are we seeing on social media? What are kids using on social media? And what are the statistics about the impacts of social media? That leads us right into our agenda item number 2, the mental health impact of social media. At times, people have pictured this as a very bleak statistic, and that is not always the case. So we just want to kind of really explore those things a little bit and see what the good and the bad of social media can be and how it can be used in positive ways, and at other times it is not being used in a very healthy way for students or for adults for that matter. That leads us right into our next segment where we talk about healthy boundaries and family agreements. So how you as a family can make decisions about the best ways to use social media if you choose to for positive things, and yet not have it become the thing that you are so captivated by that it doesn't allow you to explore any other things in your life, or that it really kind of takes over in a way that is not healthy. So how do families create agreements together? How do they work on what is appropriate use, when is appropriate use, how much use is really a good plan, and how much should be limited? So we're going to take a look at that. And lastly, we're going to look at not only the things that you can build in as a family by your own choice, but what are some of the tools that are already built into social media, either by the apps themselves or by your actual smartphone that you may be using. What things on your smartphone can you use to set some limits to keep yourself healthy and to keep your kids healthy? And also, what devices can you use and parental controls can you use from the apps that are now in place to keep social media a positive thing in your household? So let's take a look at some of the trends and statistics for social media. We're going to first talk about, why do we engage in social media? Why has it blown up so much? Why is it something that is so globally done? And some of the things about social media is there's the positives of why people actually engage. So there's a sense of belonging. People look for a sense of belonging and being part of a community, and feeling connected to one another. The last couple of years, if they've shown us nothing else, it's shown that when we get into isolation mode, it can be really difficult. So we look for ways to connect. The last couple of years, it was difficult to connect in person. So social media became, and platforms such as this one, Zoom, it really became ways that people stayed connected to one another, which is important. It is a part of our being healthy as individuals, is also to be able to connect with others. So that's part of what social media does and was what it was originally intended for. It's also for the entertainment factor. There are a lot of talented people who are sharing their talents on social media. And so people get inspired. They like to see other ideas, maybe in a field that they're interested in, whether it be musical, whether it be artistic, whether it be dance. But there are a lot of things that you can see on social media. They're just entertaining, things that can lighten your day, make your day better, make you laugh a little bit if it's been a difficult and challenging day. So entertainment is another reason for social media. It's also an outlet for creativity. As I just mentioned, you might see something that sparks your interest on social media, or there may be something that actually, if it's on YouTube, it may teach you how to do something that you never knew how to do before. So it's kind of nice to just be able to go onto social media or go onto YouTube and search for something that you've never tried before, and there could be somebody instructing on how to do that. So it's a great way to start learning and exploring and being creative. Connecting with others is also a big thing about social media. Finding groups on social media that have your same interests, and whether it be book discussion groups, whether it be other groups, if there's hiking groups, if there's activity groups where everyone's doing the same thing, it might be a great way to connect in without having to, if you haven't gone out to find these people and you don't know where they might be, if you connect with them on social media, it may allow for then opportunities to connect in person. So there's a lot of positive reasons why people connect on social media and use social media, because that, when we see it growing exponentially over the last couple of years, people do that because they're seeing some value in it. When we talk about the value in social media, there's also a physiological response when we get positive feedback. So it's an interesting phenomenon that when people talk about themselves in person, they usually do it about 30 to 40% of the time. So it's very much in conversation. It's a give and take. So you might be talking about something about yourself to a friend or to a group of friends, and then they may be sharing information about themselves. So there is very much a back and forth. On social media, people tend to talk about themselves 80% of the time, is what research is finding. And that's simply because it's the platform allows for you to simply put out your information. But then people are looking for what the responses are, whether it's a comment, whether it's a like, whether it's a retweet, whatever it might be, becomes a new form of communication. So you have talked about yourself, and then you wait for information to come back to you. And there is actually a chemical process that happens in the brain when that happens. It's called the dopamine reward loop. So when people talk about social media or telephones, gosh, smartphones, picking up your phone is one of those things where it starts as a dopamine increase. Picking up the phone because it is vibrated or because there's been a ding and a notification, there is a dopamine increase that they're finding in people's brains because they are anticipating something good. They are anticipating feedback. So when they get feedback, and if it's in the form of a nice comment or a positive interaction on social media or a like or a retweet or whatever it might be, or somebody shared your thought, like reshared or retweeted what you said, it makes you feel happy. So you've got this loop where you pick up your phone, there's a positive rush of dopamine, it increases, you're feeling happy, but then the dopamine decreases. So when the dopamine decreases afterward, people look for that rush again. They look for the next time somebody's going to say something positive, and the next time there's going to be a response. So why do we engage in social media has a lot to do with the positive things that it can offer us and the positive feedback we get from being on social media. So what does social media look like? Social media use look like in teens? Research study from the American Academy of Adolescent Psychiatry noted that 90% of teens report having used social media, while 70% report having at least one active profile or social media account. And on average, this is probably one of the statistics that is most troubling. On average, teens spend between 5 to 7 hours on social media daily. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat are the most frequently used social media platforms by teens statistically. So when we look at that one statistic that says on average, teens spend between 5 to 7 hours on social media a day. If we were thinking about a regular school day being approximately 7 hours, the time teens are spending on social media is almost equivalent to a full school day. So that they are getting as much feedback from social media as they are from being in a school setting. So it's extremely influential in what happens in their lives. So when we talk about what platforms, we mentioned this a little bit, YouTube is definitely becoming the highest used app in regards to people posting, watching YouTube videos, learning from YouTube videos, which could be a good thing, creating YouTube videos. So there's a lot of positives in that, but it is the largest and most widely used app amongst teens at this point. Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat are very similar in their statistics in regards to how much they're being used. And a lot of these things, if you'll notice, like with Instagram, even the wording of it, like TikTok, Instagram, or Snapchat, These things are very, very quick. They are not long, lengthy videos. They are not a whole television show that we might have watched previously. They are not an entire movie that used to be the forms of entertainment, even when we used to look at 30-minute sitcoms on TV. None of these are in that realm. These are all much faster, much quicker. Kids can watch a TikTok in a few minutes or in a minute and move on. Instagram and Snapchat, very, very quick response, very, very immediate response and gone. So when we talk about the immediacy, it allows students to do this and kids to do this on a regular basis. And what's interesting about it is it makes students feel that they are not spending much time on these apps because what they watch is so quick. But the other thing that happens is they watch a quick video that usually the apps are smart enough to know, link it to right to the next video. So when you watch a video, you enjoy the video, and another video is going to pop up that's similar or in the same vein. So before you know it, students have spent, or adults as well, have thought they're going to watch one TikTok video or one YouTube video, and they've watched 20 in a row. And so it really does become these lengthier amounts of time when we start talking 5 hours and 7 hours. It's lengthier amounts of time because we have been sucked in by the app, and we've looked at one short video, one short video, one short TikTok, and we just keep going because you think just one more. It's just a short little video. It's just one more. And that's the plan of the app, to function that way. And it functions actually very well for the people who've created it. The one that is not, that is losing steam certainly amongst teens, maybe not as much among adults. Somebody my age would be more likely to have a Facebook page and still use that platform. It was one of the really, really big platforms that first came out. But it's losing steam amongst the younger generation. And again, more than likely because it doesn't have as many of the bells and whistles of just simple, quick, TikTok challenges, Instagram, like quick videos, quick pictures, and then keep it moving. It tends to be a little bit more just kind of wordy, just kind of people saying something or posting something and then people responding to it. It's more of a conversational piece than the other ones were much more rapid paced. So what are teens saying about who they are on social media? I'm going to click over here to Teen Voices, and we're going to give a listen to what teens are saying about who they are on social media.
I think that social media does make people more fake.
Who's happier? Who's richer? Who appears to be the best?
I would say that it's okay to post a version of themselves that's not 100% real.
Yeah, I post things that I want other people to see.
I do think that social media has an effect on how people act in real life.
It carries a lot of weight.
I do not believe in filters, photoshopping, face tuning, none of that.
Yes, I think some people tend to obsess over their social media.
It kind of loses the meaning of what the intention of social media was, to like connect with other people.
I spend a lot of time being really careful about what I post on my main account, mostly because there's people that I don't know that well who are going to see it. My spam account, however, is just a bunch of really terrible pictures of me.
It's okay to play a little game of pretend to, show off, impress your friends.
I'm always thinking in my mind, like, for validation from other people. At the same time, I know that none of that is really worth it in the end.
As I've grown as an individual, I don't see the Lexa's comments as anything important. I feel like they don't help verify me as an individual.
I started counting my likes on my posts, and I realized soon enough that that was giving me anxiety. So I stopped doing that, but now I've learned to just post them just for my memories.
When I look back on like my social media page, I kind of relive these memories.
I'm also wondering if people will like enjoy the content just as much as I do. When it comes to likes, I never really think about that stuff.
I don't think I feel pressured to post certain things. I feel the opposite. I feel pressured not to post certain things.
Sometimes I can be pressured to post certain things, but I try not to because I like to be my own person. I don't like for people to tell me what to do.
I only post things that portray me as the young African-American scholar that I am. Even if that's not true all the time, that's the only thing I'm gonna post about.
They have one image of themselves and it's not an entire picture of who they are as a person.
How I look and how I'm portrayed in society, I'm already expected to act a certain way. So when I put myself out on social media, I really have to watch how I carry myself.
Social media or with the internet, you're able to pick and choose what people see. And it has its pros and cons.
I'm an athlete and I'm going to attend college. With that in mind, I have to pay attention to scouts. I have to pay attention to other colleges and teachers and other opportunities that might be coming my way.
I would say that curating your social media can be positive.
People can see the very best life that you're living, and people can see you being happy all the time.
It kind of gives you the power to be who you want to be and only let people see what you want them to see. It can turn negative really fast.
If you are constantly displaying yourself as always happy, it can create a lot of anxiety and depression, just a lot of stress.
When I post something, I'm checking it very frequently to see how it's doing compared to my other pictures. If it's not getting as many likes as my other pictures, I might delete it.
We only see the greatest moments or the happiest moments of people, and we don't know what happens beyond those moments or what they've done to get to those moments.
I think if someone's posting like fake, like Photoshop photos or like something that's not actually them, I don't think that's okay.
Models online, like sometimes they tend to promote unhealthy beauty expectations for teenagers like us, because teenagers are just trying to fit in, and sometimes these beauty expectations, they do get to us.
There are definitely photos where I've like put filters on it or like edit it in some way where I look skinnier or prettier or have less freckles or whatever it is. My friends are obsessed. Oh, how do I look at that picture? Oh, my body looks weird in that picture. I should have posted. I'm like, why does it matter?
There's these people who always look so perfect and they always have the cutest lattes and they're always traveling with the hot boyfriend and that's all they ever post. You expect that to be your real life. You have all these opportunities to tell people about who you are. And people tend to edit that because they want to be liked. I tend to edit that because I want to be liked. I also definitely think it's possible to overthink it. If you just feel comfortable with yourself, I think it's okay to post what you want to post. Not only does it affect how we are online, but it also affects how we hold ourselves and our self-importance in real life. That person who you see living that perfect life is kind of curating what they do. So they're not showing you all of them. So don't try to live up to that very small part of their life.
Okay, so we're going to click back over. Okay, so as you can see from our last little video clip there, there's quite an impact of social media. There's a lot of thought that goes into what students are saying about themselves, what they're posting, how they perceive feedback on social media, and again, how they curate their image on social media, and the comments that they make about whether or not they get a certain number of likes. And I just noticed in the chat, somebody mentioned how interesting it was to see that the student, the one young man who said that he checks his social media frequently to see how many likes he got on a particular post or a picture, and that if it's not doing very well, and it's not doing as well as his other pictures, so he's getting into that comparison mode, he takes it down. So yes, I find that interesting too, that they're really looking for that validation and looking for that feedback. And there is a reality check sometimes that they also acknowledge that it doesn't have to be the only form of validation for me about who I am. And yet at the same time, they still think about, and the other young lady spoke and said how she carries herself on social media also impacts how she carries herself in her school or in her regular life. So that's actually kind of a great segue to our next area, which is mental health, the impact of mental health on social media on mental health. So social media can be used. When we see social media, what does it look like? This is what it can be. It can be a lot of anger. And we've seen this in the last several years, very much increase. There's been a lot of tension, a lot of stress in the world, and a lot of that is pouring out onto social media. So rather than conversations, we're seeing arguments. Rather than dialogue, we're seeing attacks. So it can be like that. On the other hand, this is what it can be as well. So that's just kind of a fun little note. So as we see, there can be the angry side of social media. There can also be the entertaining or the much lighter side of social media. This is also what social media can be. It can be isolating when somebody gets onto social media and the comments or the reflections or some of the bullying that takes place when people get much more bold behind a screen than they ever would in person. It can really make somebody feel isolated or very alone. And at the same time, social media can be used for good. It can be used for fundraisers. It can be used to encourage people to help one another. So there's a lot of social media that sends a positive message, and it all depends on how teens and how adults are using it. I apologize, we're having a little bit of a technical glitch. Okay, so a survey. So when we talk about there's some common myths about correlation and causation with social media and mental health. There's a lot of commentary out there that social media causes specific illnesses, causes specific disorders. And what they're finding is that it is not always the case. There could be some correlation, but not necessarily causation. So people who are more susceptible to certain things, social media can impact that for the good or for the bad. So when they did a survey of teens through commonsense.org, it revealed that teens themselves in general do not experience their social media use as having a negative impact on their lives. So when we look at the statistics on the screen, 70% of teens use social media multiple times a day. Over 70% of teens don't feel better or worse after social media use. At least this is what they're reporting. 25% of teens feel less lonely after social media use. 18% of teens feel better about themselves after social media use. 12% of teens feel less anxious after social media use. And 16% of teens feel less depressed after social media use. So this, again, was one survey that speaks to people feeling more connected when they're using social media, and they do not feel like it was impacting them in a negative way. So you have that one side of the spectrum that says, this isn't really that bad for me. I'm connecting, and I'm connecting in a good way. We flip to the opposite side, correlation versus causation. So in a study, again, by the American Academy of Adolescent and Child Psychiatry, there was a statistic of 33% is the rate of increase in adolescent depression from 2010 to 2015 in the advent of social media, and smartphones were coming out originally in the mid 2000s, 2007. So 33% increase. 66% was the increase, the rate of likelihood in adolescents for suicidal thought or self-harm when using social media 5+ hours a day. On the contrary side, the rate that determined thoughts of suicide or self-harm can actually be directly attributed to social media was 0.36%. So we're seeing a huge flux in whether or not things are correlated or whether they are caused by. And how do we figure into this all the other factors that are going on in somebody's life? That social media, it clearly has an impact, but is it the cause of what's happening? So these are the things like what we know for sure. How much adolescents use social media makes a difference. Teens who use most digital media are reported as being the most unhappy in almost every set of research that has been done. What they're using social digital platforms for also matters. Teens who use social media passively or only to get likes or follows have the most negative outcomes. So if social media is used by teens as their sense of validation and as their sense of self-worth, they are the ones who are most impacted in a negative way if it doesn't work out well, if they are not getting that continual validation. Whereas somebody who is using social media to connect, to post something creatively, to create with other people or collaborate or learn a new skill or talent, are not having those same impacts. The other thing is what other factors might matter more. So overall media balance with sleep, general health, and other factors play a huge role in our mental health. Does social media impact it? Yes, it can, but there are a lot of other things going on in our lives that contribute to our mental health. Physical health contributes to our mental health. Our connections to people matter. It makes a difference in our mental health. How we get supports when we need them makes a difference in our mental health. So there are a lot of things that play into this that are not simply social media based. So what are some healthy uses for social media versus unhealthy uses? What research is finding is that healthy uses for social media are actively creating entertainment with positive messages, connecting with friends, or learning new skills or talents. So each time in this presentation so far, it has come up that when people are engaging with others, or they are doing something positive or learning something new, they are challenging themselves, they are engaging their mind, social media can be extremely beneficial. The unhealthy uses that we see are there's a new term called doom scrolling. Doom scrolling is basically when people just swipe, and they see story after story after story about things that are difficult or challenging or negative or tragic going on in the world. So the doom scrolling is something that's extremely unhealthy, because before you know it, somebody has taken into their brain multiple stories about negative things that are happening in the world, and multiple stories about sadness or grief or tragedy. And and it's not that those things don't exist or that anything should be ignored. It's just the constant scrolling and to just pull it into your system without actually being able to do something about that situation it impacts us in our mental health and well-being. The other one that we have talked about is validation or passive feedback seeking. So when I post something simply for the purpose of seeing how many people are going to respond to it in a positive way, how many people are going to say, if I post a picture, that's a great picture, or if I make a comment, they say that's really funny, and there's how many people respond validates to me whether that is a worthwhile picture or a worthwhile post. So I'm looking continually outside for somebody to say that something about me was valid or worthwhile. And also engaging in arguments or conflicts rather than dialogues. And what we're finding is that particularly when people have public settings on their accounts versus private settings on their account, they end up engaging in arguments or conflicts rather than dialogues with people that they have never met, likely never will meet, and they do not even know who these people are, where they live. They've never met them before, but there is something that they argue, they find something in a comment that is different than their opinions or different than their views, and they argue or they debate back and forth, and they get wrapped up into a cycle of arguing or debating, and they are debating with somebody who they will never interact with in real life. But it takes up a great deal of time, a great deal of energy, and it is all negative energy that's being brought into their system. The last thing that's unhealthy in use is comparison scrolling. And one of the girls in the Teen Voices video alluded to this, that when she talked about how people present themselves on social media and the image that they curate, that they basically create on social media, and then somebody else views that creation and sees it as reality. So they see your post where you're always looking your best. You're not ever looking like you just rolled out of bed with your hair sticking up straight. And, you know, if you're like me and you have and no makeup on and your hair is a mess and you're in a t-shirt and baggy shorts, it's a very different look than if you've gotten yourself together and then post a picture. So the comparison scrolling is really looking at things, seeing it as real, and then trying to live up to that as if that's people's reality all the time. And we know that that's simply not the case. So how do we set healthy boundaries? And how do we set some family agreements? So there's a phrase from Robert Fulghum. Robert Fulghum is a longtime author. He wrote a very famous book and some follow-ups that was called Everything I Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. So his quote was, "Don't worry that children never listen to you. Worry that they are always watching you." In social media use and smartphone use, this is particularly true. It's difficult when we are working to set boundaries and limitations for healthiness with social media and the use of the smartphone or the use of technology when we ourselves as adults are not modeling that. So what we're finding is if we try and tell kids, we talk to them and tell them or require them to do things, and yet we are not practicing that same thing and we are continually on our phone or continually scrolling, they look at that and they realize you're telling me to do things that you don't do. So if it's not healthy for me, it's probably not healthy for you. And yet you think that that's a good idea to tell me that I should be healthier somehow than you should be. So we really need to pay attention to those things. So this isn't about simply making demands, because that usually backfires. And we all know teens just find a way around that. It's really about sitting down and kind of talking things through and coming up with boundaries and agreements. So some of that is the when, where, how long, and content of social media. The when, determine agreed upon times of the day that social media can be used. So if this is the kind of thing where you are setting limits on your child's phone while they're at school, if you are setting some limits on at what time should the social media scrolling stop or interacting stop, is that 10 o'clock at night? Is it 9 o'clock at night? Is it something in regards to what we're doing as a family? So if it's at dinner time and everyone's sitting down, do all phones go away? Are all phones off the table so there's no social media? So you're talking about when over the course of a day or the course of a week, it's appropriate to be using social media. The next piece is the where, determine where social media can and cannot be used. So this part is two-pronged. So the where is if your child is making videos or TikToks or any kind of postings or pictures, where do you want them to take those and where do you not want them to take them in regards to physical location? So is there a limit on, I do not want anything posted where it is in your room, or I don't want anything posted where it is in a bathroom, or is there some specific part of your house that you do not want things posted where other people could see specific areas of your home? So where are the places that you feel it's appropriate for your child to be making any kind of post or video from, like the location? It also has to do with where they're going to be using social media over the course of time. So where they actually create things and where they use it. So again, if you want students to set a time limit, we don't use it at night. So where are you using it? Are you using it in the family room? You can have it on you can use your social media in your own room, that's fine. But at a certain point, we want to draw a line about where that's interaction is taking place. And then determine an agreed upon amount of time. So this is how long, so how much social media are we using? And if you're on settings on your phone, you can look at your social media use. You can look at the technology you use on your phone that not only tells you how much time you're spending on different apps, but it breaks it down very clearly. So it can tell you, I'm spending this amount of time texting, this amount of time on social media. Many phones at this point will even break down which apps you're using the most. And you can start tracking, and it's a good thing for parents to do it, excuse me, and for kids to do it, because if parents do it and kids are doing this and you're agreeing to do that, you both can kind of hold each other accountable. That if I look at my phone and say, I was using social media today for 4 hours and I had no idea that I'd gotten up to that level, then maybe my goal is to drop back by half by the end of the week. So setting some goals about what are the limits of how much time you're going to spend on social media, and how do we make sure that that seems reasonable, and how do we hold each other accountable for what we agreed to do. And lastly, this would be content. Determine agreed upon content that can be viewed or created. Things to consider when you're setting up agreements and you're working with your students. Will your agreements be, what will your agreements be as to whether your accounts will be public or private? Is anyone going to have access to your account, or are you going to specifically have a private account where only friends who you have allowed to follow or allowed into your realm are you going to keep things private so you can keep things a little bit more locked down on your account? What will your agreements be regarding passwords? Will you require that your child gives you their password for their accounts? What will your agreements be if your child receives unwanted attention or bullying comments on social media? So if they are receiving unwanted attention from somebody or bullying comments, is your expectation that they share that with you? Is your expectation that that person then is blocked from their account? What is your expectation? What will your agreements be about friends or followers? Will this be people, will you be looking for knowing who these people are? Do you want your children to know the people specifically, or they say, hey, this person follows me, I'm not really sure who they are, but they seem like an okay person. So if you are all right with that, it's fine. But that's an agreement that has to come down between the family. And what will your agreements be regarding parental and guardian access to your accounts? Some people feel very strongly that if they're paying for a smartphone that a child is using, then anything that they have as an account, they should have access to as well. Others feel much more strongly that they should be giving their child some privacy and some autonomy and independence. So what will your agreements be regarding access to accounts? And these are things just to consider while you're having the conversations. Beyond individual social media, so as a family, what will be your non-negotiables in regards to time without electronics? And again, this could be when we're at the dinner table, there's no electronics. When we are sitting around doing board games, there's no electronics. When extended family come to visit, there's no electronics. So whatever the agreement is, and again, we worry more about what kids watch us do than what we tell them to do. So if we're going to ask them to honor these agreements, it is best served and best practice if we honor them as well. How can you as a family connect over social media? So there's no reason why as a family, you couldn't make a TikTok together. You couldn't create a video together. You couldn't create a post of something fun that you're doing together. So it's nice to not look at social media as this evil outsider and be able to say, this is what we did together, and post it on social media. Or your child posts a really cool video on their TikTok and you make a comment, or they do the same thing on Instagram and you comment on it, or you liked it on Instagram. So you are showing your support for what they're doing or something positive that they're doing on social media. How will you hold each other accountable for your agreements? And what will your reasonable consequences be if agreements are broken? It's really important when we're talking about teens that they do impulsive things. They're going to make mistakes. And when things come down if you come down very, very heavily, it tends to backfire over time. So what is the reasonable response of this was a mistake? We've talked about what our agreements were, and you can depersonalize it a little bit that way by saying, this is what we agreed to. And if that rule or that agreement has been broken, then this is where we go. And this is the next steps that we agreed to take. But it doesn't become an all or nothing, because what we find is when teens especially get all or nothing consequences, they may accept the consequence, but they tend to just find a loophole or a way around it. And they tend to not confide as much in their parents or in their guardians if they don't feel like they're going to have any kind of say or any kind of reasonable consequence for something that happened. So we're asking, if you can do some things with your students and your children to set healthy boundaries. We've given some ideas of how you can do that and ways that you can build up a connection between the two, between all of you, family and, children, parents, guardians, and social media. But what's also nice is you don't have to do that alone. There are some built-in social media supports for you. Talked a little bit about this already. Phone settings, at least on an Android, under settings, there's a tab called Digital Wellbeing and Parent Controls. It's that simple. What does it allow for? It allows for limiting the time of day when the phone has access to internet. It limits the amount of time that you can spend on any particular app. So for example, if you find that there's one app in particular that is becoming a time suck for your child and they're not getting anything else done, you can limit the time on that particular app to try and balance things out again. It also allows you can track your use to correct what is often our misperception of the amount of time spent on screens or apps. There was one research study found participants underestimated their daily use by 34%. So again, we think I was scrolling for a few minutes. I just checked out my Facebook page for maybe 10 minutes and it was 40 minutes. So we're finding that what our estimation is of how much time we're spending is not accurate. We tend to underestimate rather than overestimate that. The other nice thing is some of the biggest ones that we said that students are using. There isn't much in regards to parental controls of YouTube, but in regards to TikTok and Instagram, they have created a possibility for you to have some account holder controls and also parent control options. So content age restrictions is one of them. The limit of activity allowed on the site, for example, depending on the age. So when a person creates an account based on the birthday that they put in, the site would limit what things they are allowed to do on that site. So an example may be, they may be able to create a video, but they may not be able to receive DMs, which is direct messages or comments. So it allows them to still use the site to be creative, but it doesn't activate all of the options on the site based on somebody saying that person's a little bit younger, they may be a little bit more impulsive, or they may be a little bit younger and there may be somebody older who is going to send them a message, and we want to avoid that. So there are some content age restrictions that are already put on TikTok for sure. Privacy settings, who can see your account or comment and send message. So again, this is when we talk public or private settings, very important. My strongest recommendation would always be to do a private account, because in that way you have a much, not total control, but you certainly have a greater level of control over who is seeing what you're posting, who is commenting, who's allowed to comment on what you are posting, who would be able to share something that you posted. So privacy settings, very important. Another one is pairing. So what a parent can do, and this is for TikTok, you can pair your account with your child's account. So the parent can set restrictions on the account, is what basically amounts to a co-owner of the account. You're able to limit time usage, time of use filter content, the age of the individuals who can send a direct message to your child if your child's under 16. So if your child is under the age of 16, there is with the pairing option, it is one of the limits you're allowed to put in place of who can actually send a direct message to your child. This is important because it does not allow you to, the pairing does not allow you to see their content or comments, but it allows you to remotely control the restrictions. So a teen cannot change the settings that you have put in place without your approval. You may not be able to see what is on their content or what is on their account, but you can set restrictions even remotely from your phone, so that as much as possible you've created a safe environment so that they can then go enjoy their account and not feel like everything I'm going to do, my mom's going to look at, my dad's going to look at or comment on or say something about. They are allowed to have that autonomy of not having everything with there's somebody over their shoulder, And yet at the same time, you can put enough things in place to feel like you've created a safer environment online for your child. And another, obviously, one of the last ones and most obvious ones probably is friending or following your child on their account. So, you know, when I think of like a Facebook, which again, only about 51% of teens were saying that they even have an account, but you're friending them on their account. So you could see their content. You won't see their personal messages or their DMs or direct messages, but you can see what is on their account. And making sure that what you're seeing seems appropriate, or what you've agreed upon in your family agreements and boundaries. And then also following. So following on some of the other accounts, you would be doing following, not friending. And some parents would want to require that your child allow them to friend or follow their accounts in order to have real-time access to what's being posted or posted by other people to their account. So that's, you know, we give a lot of information in a fairly short period of time when we're talking about social media, how it can be used for positive, how there's some things that we also have to be careful about for mental health and for well-being. But there's definitely positives that can be done with families together with individuals as students. There's a lot of creativity that goes on and a lot of connectivity that goes on social media. So it is not all bad. But in regards to us paying attention to how much we're using, how are we using it, and what are we taking in on a regular basis from our social media accounts, and whether or not that social media account is how we are valuing ourselves, then we've got something, we have something there that's not quite connecting and not the original purpose of social media for connection. So this quote just really resonated with me, that if you are on social media and you are not learning, not laughing, not being inspired, or not networking, then you are using it wrong. So just that concept of using it for good, using it for your own benefit without it becoming your control, something that you control your social media, it does not control you. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you attending. The next screen I'm going to show is just the resources that we used. And also, you know, just from talking to kids at our school. But these are great resources for any parents. If you want more information on what are the statistics saying? How can I support my child online? What are ways that I can make sure that they are as safe as possible with still giving them some autonomy? So these were our resources. And we are also going to be posting this presentation on the Lake Braddock website. So again, thank you so much for attending. I appreciate your time.